Welcome to the NuVescor Closing Table with Seth Getz, the podcast where M&A professionals, deal makers, and industry experts come together to break down the art and the science of mergers and acquisitions. So let's all grab coffee and let's talk about buying, selling, and everything between. And today we've got with us Travis Ernst. Now, Travis is a partner and managing director of NuVescor, and he has a long history of working around this space. Now, first of all, you spent much time in the military, in the Army, correct?
Yeah, about 12 years in the Army.
Yep. So thank you for your service with that. And then you did some time running a business as well as in investment banking before you came to NuVescor. So a long, varied history of that. But now with NuVescor, you've been, for the last 11 years, coordinating and quarterbacking, basically, business ownership transitions. And one of the things that you said is that as good as you are at doing this, you've always talked about the need for a team, a coordinated team that all works together on working through this. What is this team that is needed in order to make an effective transition for a business owner?
Really, anytime you have a team in place, you've got a lot of people working together. You don't have one expert doing all the work. That's what we really try and encourage the business owners to have as a team around them. You know, they've been working with an attorney for years, most businesses have. They don't necessarily all have transactional experience. But if you look at the buy side, they're going to be working with attorneys who have a lot of transactional experience on the buy side. So that's a consideration in the team you're building, is their experience in the space. Pretty much all businesses are working with an accountant. And the accountant's a key piece to understand the tax implications and as you structure deals and what are your net proceeds over time and all of that. So they're key to have that expertise at the table. Your wealth manager, what are you going to do at the end of the day when the funds hit? Do you have a plan for that? So you want to have some sort of plan for that, and that's a great person to have on the team. And they come onto the team different times and places, but to have a role, have the team kind of assembled, and you know who they are. You've got experience with them, and you know their experience. It really makes for a much smoother transaction and more successful transactions at the end of the day.
So every business owner, the only way that they succeed in a business is by actually assembling a team over the years of people that are their advisors, that are key points in their business. Can you tell me what's the difference between the team that they have assembled over the years to actually run their business and the team that they need to successfully sell their business?
To run a business, you have to have the right people on the team to be successful. But that team is looking in. They're looking at the product they're making, the service they're providing, what they're doing to move that business forward to succeed at the end of the day. The transaction team is going to look at it from a different perspective. They're going to say, well, how is a buyer going to see this business? When a buyer looks at the financials, are they in order? Are they? They're going to dig in and understand the revenue and the expenses and do the analysis on the balance sheet. But the team is really going to bring that perspective of how do we best position this as a buyer looks at a particular business to put them in the best light, in the best position. So they're really working on the business and not in the business. I know it's a common phrase, but it really helps to have an outside team looking at the business from the outside and give you that perspective. So I'd say that's the difference. In the business would be the business team doing the work, and you've got the external advisory team looking at it from the outside.
So does that mean that if you already have an attorney that you work with in the business, that you should actually have a different attorney to do a transaction, or is the same thing with advisor or tax advisor or anything else? Do you need a different one, or is it just that you need to make sure that you have one?
Not necessarily a different one. I think that's, as you get to know your advisor, your attorney, that's one of the questions we ask during our prep process is, who's your attorney and what kind of transaction experience do they have? If their focus is on litigation, they're not spending their time and energy in the transaction space. And just like anything else in the M&A world, the legal challenges, they change. There's different things to focus on. What's market today is not market tomorrow. So the question we would have is your attorney active in the transaction space? And a lot of times there might be another attorney at the same firm. And we're not going to tell somebody to go get another attorney. We're going to talk to the ones that they have and understand their experience and what their focus is. And then we can ask that attorney also, if you're not the right person for this transaction work, is there somebody you recommend? And then we can always refer them to people that we know as well.
So you mentioned attorney. We've talked about that quite a bit. CPA
Mm-hmm.
and wealth advisor. Who are the other possible members of this team?
I think your banker is going to want to know what's going on. It's good to, if you have just for the communications, you don't, surprise them out of the blue that, hey, you're going to see a big wire hitting the account tomorrow. You want to have a plan in place for that. I think having an M&A advisor obviously is another key person on the team. Somebody who can kind of see all the moving pieces and understand who's on the buy side and the sell side, because there's a lot of interaction throughout the process. The attorney, the accountant, the wealth manager. Sometimes you get the insurance agent involved in this, but that's more when you're getting closer to closing, just providing information for the diligence period.
In addition to a wealth manager and a CPA, is there ever a need for what I'm going to call a tax advisor? Someone who's going to look at the transaction and say, how do we actually minimize the taxes for this transaction?
The accountant on the team should be able to answer those questions.
That should be that should be something they can handle.
Yeah.
Got it. Good.
Yeah. The wealth advisor, wealth manager might be able to give you some options to minimize the taxes. If it's charitable giving or donor advised funds, there's other vehicles out there to minimize the taxes, as opposed to accountant may just look at, for a stock sale, you can have this impact. For an asset sale, you'll have this impact. And some accountants will be able to provide some tax strategy. But a wealth advisor may have a few more tools in the chest to go, hey, let's consider this, depending on the size of the transaction.
From a business owner perspective, as they're looking at their existing team, which they know who their existing team is,
mm-hmm.
How do they look at this thing, and what qualities do they look for and say, does this person have that quality? Can they get me there through this thing? They've been useful for many years. They've been helping me with these things, but can they get me to there? What's the qualities you look for?
It's experience in transactions. That's one of the best indicators of if they've had success with other clients working through transactions, and that's just a communication. That's a sit down with your attorney or accountant and just go, hey, I need to understand what you've done before. Is this something you're familiar with? Just to be comfortable with that. And then if they're not, hopefully there's that honest communication. If they're not, well, who would you recommend? Is there somebody else in this firm that I can work with, or they could be brought in for specific times. But that relationship, the relationship with that client is so important to maintain throughout. That trust has to be built and maintained. Mm-hmm. Advisors are going to do the best they can for their client. They're looking out for the best interest of their client. That's where we kind of work with them sometimes to go, hey, let's ask these questions. Let's find out. Because at the end of the day, the buyer's going to have an attorney. They're going to have their plans in place as well, and we want to be able to again negotiate and get to a successful transaction at the end of the day.
So, a difficult question for a business owner is them thinking about, when do I start telling people that I'm thinking about this? When do I start talking about it? I don't want word to ever get out there. I don't want people to be talking about it. I don't want it to get back to anyone on my team or anything like that. When do they start talking to their team, their attorney, their CPA, their wealth advisor? When do they start that conversation?
Yeah. I've talked to entrepreneurs before, and if you start planning for the end day one, ideally you're looking at, what does the end look like? What's my goal? So if you start planning for the end from day one, you're going to have a team that's there with you the whole time going, hey, we're 10 years out. Mm-hmm. Is there anything I need to be doing now? 10 years is a long ways out to be looking at it, but knowing that there will be an end at some point, the business will be transferred at some point. Knowing that's coming, it doesn't hurt to have that conversation very early on, but once you start getting 2 or 3 years out, to me, that'd be the time to go, let's take a little more closer look at this from an accountant perspective. How can I position myself financially? My financials that the buyer's going to be looking at and digging into, how do we make them clean and neat and defensible? And that sometimes can take a few years to work through that. How much money am I taking out of the business personally? Are there some we would call add backs? Are there things you're doing that we're gonna adjust out of the bottom line? Are those the right ones? Should those be minimized? Just to smooth that out. And with an attorney, do you have your documents in place? Do you have because there's a standard, that your due diligence is going to ask a lot of the same questions. Do you have, do you have stock certificates? Do you have any operating agreements, buy-sell agreements? Have them all documented, and having those in place within a few years out it's not too soon to start that.
So for a business owner, just to have that conversation, we'll just say once a year with their CPA, just saying, okay, I'm this many years out in my mind. What do we need to think about? What do I need to be aware of? And just have that early stage conversation, and then come back to okay, we're a year to 3 years out now. Now let's talk about this seriously. So it's a good idea to talk with them early on. Does this include also your wealth advisor and your banker?
I would say your wealth advisor for sure, because you want to, you want to be able to have this, different strategies in place. If I exit in 3 years and I expect this lump sum at closing, what can I start, looking at? What are my options there? Versus maybe it's going to be, the structure may be over a seller note over 5 years or 10 years. So, having an understanding of different options, the more information you have, the better decision you can make. And bankers, I think it doesn't hurt to talk to them, as you progress through there, because they're looking at it. Well, what's next? If you sell your business, what other services are they going to be able to provide post close? They're going to look at different vehicles as well, and I'd say the earlier conversations with the accountant, and eventually your attorney, and the wealth manager as well.
Okay. There's a lot of different types of transitioning of ownerships or transitioning out of a business that can happen. Some of them are transitioning to a family member. Some of them are transitioning to a management team. That can be a very technical ESOP or not. Some of them are when you're selling a majority interest in the business, and the others when you sell the entire business. All these things come up. Is there a different team needed for different types of transactions like this?
There's always going to be an attorney involved, just for the legal documentation and the legal counsel for liabilities, protections. There's going to be an accountant involved, regardless, because there's going to be a tax situation. There's going to be planning for the funds that are getting transferred. The wealth advisor there's still going to be a liquidity event. So there may be a lump sum of cash that needs to be managed. So there's not I think there's going to be a team involved no matter what. Maybe there won't be a full buy side counter team. You may be able to handle transfer from ownership from an owner to a general manager with the single accountant or the attorney. So there may be fewer members on the team, but you're still going to want the key players at the table as you move closer and closer to that final event.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you've worked this process through. You've quarterbacked hundreds of transactions at this point in time. What are some of the red flags that show up for you where you oh no, this may not be the right person on the team? This person is not helping the transaction. This person is not helping the situation. What are the early stage red flags that a business owner might be able to pick up on to say, this is not the right person?
Yeah, I think somebody who doesn't have that team mindset, I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna do it all, and I'm gonna do it my way. And you just button heads with somebody on the team. Everything has to go. It takes extra time to work through that one issue, that one advisor. So I'd say the biggest thing, the red flag is we've got somebody who's not a team player and who doesn't. It almost turns into this power struggle, and that's not what it should be at all. It's everybody's working together for the best good of the client. Mm-hmm. Not being a team player, requiring extra time and energy to get through a simple step, let's get an approval here, let's draft this, or there's every advisor has their role and expertise, but we all should be moving the same direction.
Good. What advice would you give to a business owner, having been through this, watched these things happen so many times? What advice would you give to the business owner who is thinking about this transaction and thinking down the road and thinking about, okay, I need to start thinking about my team? Mm-hmm. What do they need to think about?
Yeah, I would say think about the timing. If you're I'm going to be 5 to 10 years out, it should still be on your radar. Mm-hmm. It may not be the top of mind thing. It may not be the thing you meet and talk to your accountant or CPA your attorney or CPA every quarter, every month, but it should be on the radar. And I think something that isn't always thought through is, okay, you sell your business. What's next? Do you have plans for what you're going to do? Some people do. Some people are like, I'll figure it out, and that can sometimes be a red flag because they're not necessarily prepared. So there's some exit planning that should be going on as well. So I would say 2 to 3 years out, start letting your advisors know. It doesn't hurt to talk to somebody who's sold their business just to understand kind of what they went through, but to find an M&A advisor, just to sit down and go, all right, help me understand what this process looks like. Having that knowledge makes the process, doesn't necessarily make it easier. It makes it easier to go through, because the process can be long, hard, strenuous. It feels like an uphill battle because you're running your business, and it feels like selling your business is a full-time job as well. So kind of understanding what you're getting into, so you're mentally prepared for it. And that takes conversation, that takes time, that takes, asking questions and realizing it's a tough path, but if you have a team around you that knows what's going to happen and how to prepare you for it, you can get to a successful close at the end of the day a lot easier.
A lot of business owners, they started out their business alone, just them, with an idea, and they started building from there. Now, the team assembled over time, but they started out just themselves. And while that kind of works for a business, it does not work that well, as you're talking about, for a transaction, because you need to have the team in place before you start the transaction, before you start the process, right, or else it could be much more difficult. So
yeah, because most business owners haven't done this before.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's all new, and it takes time to work through the questions and understanding and frustrations, and it takes a team really to move through that process. And everybody's got their expertise. One person isn't able to do all aspects, effectively.
Yeah.
Not in a timely manner either.
Yeah. It can drag out then if you don't have this right team in place.
Yeah.
But yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, thank you so much for talking this through. And this is very helpful to know, because this is a key part of anyone trying to transition out of their business, is having the right and effective team to go through. So if you'd like to have a conversation at all with Travis around this, his information will be in the comments here. And thank you again so much. And we'll talk to you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for future episodes. The Closing Table by NuVescor was created by Rebecca Jelsma and produced by Aaron Sherman.